and Morty comic issue 4. We start out with Morty being told to wake up at night by a drunk Rick who says he needs his help and opens up a portal. Then Morty confuses me when he asks if he could at least get dressed when he's not in his pajamas. He's just in the exact same clothing he's always in. Rick tells him that they'll be back in 5 minutes, but every time he tells him something like that, their adventure ends up lasting an unusually long time. They go through the portal, Morty asks where they are, and Rick tells him to keep his voice down, and Morty wishes he would at least tell him something. Rick looks into a cabin through the window and calls the people in there traitors and says he knew they were organizing. In Archie Sonic, they would make the text bubbles look different to indicate that someone was whispering. Here it just looks like Rick and Morty are continuing to speak at normal volume after Rick said to keep the voice down. So I'm wondering why the hell the aliens having turkey right in front of them aren't hearing Rick tell Morty to study their ways because tomorrow he'll be one of them. The window's even open for no reason, so it's not like we can imagine that the window can't be heard through. I guess I have to assume that despite the huge ears of these aliens, they're deaf to what Rick is saying. It would have made more sense if Rick had told all of this to Morty somewhere else, like in his bedroom. Anyways, early in the morning, Morty wakes up in the cabin screaming at an alien who Rick only sent to give him breakfast. He snarks at him, "Congratulations on fending off the guy bringing you breakfast. I hope you like eggs with a little flour on them." Apparently, Rick is so used to this alien that it totally went over his head that its scary appearance would startle Morty when he woke up without being introduced to him properly, which Rick could have easily done last night. Rick even looked surprised at Morty panicking, told him to calm down, and he went to his room asking him if he was enjoying his breakfast, so it's not like he knew he'd panic and intentionally set this up. Morty follows him down the stairs and says that he doesn't think he'll feel comfortable spying on people. Rick finally tells him that this place is a non-profit farm where he takes in aliens orphaned by their parents' home war and gives them a wage and bed. The non-profit part is going to be pretty confusing later. And he complains that they're threatening to strike by slowing down production. I mean, maybe he was lying when he said non-profit. Morty wants the two sides to sit down and talk things through, and Rick pushes him out of the house, saying that he has to go on because if they stand around talking too long, their cover might be blown. I guess because someone might end up hearing them. Like he's paranoid that they might be spied on because he wants Morty to spy. Then we see Morty trying to pull a broom out of the ground and failing, and an alien tells him that if he twists it, it'll come right out, and assumes that he's simply a new worker on their farm, even though he's clearly of a completely different species from her, and you'd think that'd give him away as suspicious. It's not like Morty's giving them all a backstory for himself to explain why a human's here. She tells him not to be caught resting when the harvesters come around, and Morty stutters a thank you. We get to the aliens cheering for Morty for making it through his first day and still standing. It turns out they're having a party, with Morty even holding kegs of beer, or at least what looks like beer. That's odd for a teenager to have. Morty may look like and sound like a wimp, but I guess that is pretty impressive that he made it through his first day. The girl says that they do this for everybody and just like to party, and Morty thanks her for the help earlier, when he already did that. And she tells him to follow her so she can show him something. She leads him outside and tells him that she'll let him know when it'll be safe to come in. Then Rick contacts Morty through the spy cam in his pants he didn't tell him about, saying that he's gonna get lucky with the girl. Morty complains about Rick doing this without telling him, and for some reason accuses him of not trusting anyone and calls him a paranoid sad old man. Rick just says he doesn't like sitting in a cramped room with a bug butler, and this is what they have to do on a spy mission. But Morty just throws his pants away while insulting the mission, I guess because he spent enough time with the workers to sympathize with them. Just then, while Morty's saying here's what I think of your mission, the girl comes up behind him, and Morty lies that there was a bug on his pants. She just says, "I see," somehow believing him despite what he was clearly saying earlier. He's even the same species as Rick, a fellow human. Shouldn't it have been the obvious conclusion to these aliens that he was Rick's grandson, or at least relative, and therefore was probably working for him? Maybe they assumed that Rick was literally just sending his grandson to work with them, and that was all, just to be a dick to him, and didn't think he was a spy. I mean, after all, Rick is a jerk, so they probably assumed that not even a family member of his would willingly work for him. So she completely forgets that Morty just yelled at and threw away his pants, and simply leads him to a building saying that she trusts him. And they even lampshade how easily she's trusting him. Morty asks if she's preparing for war, and she says these are relics of the great struggle that ended years ago. She says that they're planning to overthrow Rick. Heartwarmingly enough, even though Morty was just mad at Rick, He immediately says that he's more reasonable than he seems and advises working together to come to a compromise. She refuses and tells him that Rick was the man who started the war in the first place. And he's still paying them. And who else would give them money at their age? Then we cut to later, where Morty tells Rick that he wants out of the mission. Rick wants to explain that it's not as bad as it looks, and Morty says he has until he's done packing his suitcase. Why'd he even bring a suitcase full of things to this planet anyways? He was dragged here from his bedroom without having the time to go pack. I guess after Rick portaled him here, he portaled back home so Morty could pointlessly pack his things and bring them to a planet he'd only be working on for a little while, where who knows what could happen to them. What does he have to pack anyways? Rick for some reason says that a kid having a suitcase is anachronistic, and then explains that he is probably underpaying the aliens, saying he's running a business, and then says he's not a dictator or whatever he's thinking. Again, paying. So, how do these aliens expect to get anyone to pay them other than Rick with child labor laws? I mean, it doesn't look like there's any other alternative to Rick that they have. Wouldn't they just be screwing themselves over if they overthrew Rick? Morty says that he was the one who pitted their peaceful tribes against each other. Would have been interesting to learn how he did that. I guess he spread lies, tricked them into thinking that the two tribes were evil. Rather than trying to defend himself against that, Rick just dismisses what he says because he thinks Morty has a crush on the girl from earlier, even though she's a weird-looking alien. He's desperate. Morty walks out of the house, and Rick tells him that he's sorry about his suitcase, and wonders why they ever went out of style. Suitcases went out of style? Well, it was nice of him to apologize. Morty says he doesn't know why he came here in the first place. Rick clearly dragged him into the portal against his will. Doesn't he remember that? Just as I was wondering where Morty planned to go on this planet and what he planned to do since he doesn't have a portal gun, it turns out he does, because he used it to create a portal, and he complains that he'll never see Daphne again. Then all of a sudden a mob of alien workers with torches and pitchforks they somehow got show up behind him, and rather than questioning how he made the portal, Daphne just asks him where he's going when the revolution's just beginning. So it's official, they have to have known that Morty is Rick's grandson, because otherwise she'd be questioning how he just casually had the portal gun and was using it. Or she'd at least say he must have stolen it from Rick. I guess they saved up the money to buy the torches and pitchforks. Rick spits out his food and complains that he already told his butler he doesn't like bug people food. I guess the bug guy's so used to eating it that he completely forgot that Rick said he didn't like it because it's such a natural thing to eat to him. There's a lot of instances of characters being confusing idiots in the story. Rick hears some noise outside from the revolution. It's nice of him to tell the butler to go home to his family and say that he's been a good butler, even after he just gave him bug food. And it was brave of Rick to just go out and face the angry people instead of hiding. I mean, Morty does have his only portal gun on the planet, right? Wait, then how did Rick plan on coming back home if he just stood there and let Morty walk away from him carrying his only portal gun? I don't know whether Rick's being ridiculously gutsy here, facing them like this, or just ridiculously overly egotistical to think that he'll somehow be able to make it out of this situation without his portal gun. I mean, you'd think he'd at least have a ray gun with him to defend himself. Anyways, Rick asks them all what their new leader promised him after they take him out. You know, maybe that does relate to my point from earlier. They don't have any other alternative to Rick. How are they going to make money without him? They're actually being idiots here, and we're not going to see them get punished for their idiocy. Daphne furiously tells her workers to ignore him because he took their homes and families inciting the war. And she says she plans to kill him. Morty then tries to make her miss her shot with the ray gun, but since he inexplicably took too long to react against her, even though she was clearly telegraphing what she was going to do, she shot him just fine. So while he proved his loyalty to Rick, it didn't matter. Morty panics and runs up to him showing concern. In most series, it would immediately be a foregone conclusion that there's no way they'd actually kill off a main character. But this is a series with parallel universes all over the place, so the idea isn't entirely out of the question that he's gonna die, because it could have been an alternate universe version of Rick. Or they could just be replaced by an alternate universe version later, and it wouldn't matter. So they're free to do that if they want. Of course, they're never gonna permanently get rid of Rick from the series, but that wasn't the point. Rick tells him to tell Summer she's brave, and that his mom needs to let herself be happy, in a surprisingly sad moment. and tells Morty to tell Jerry to eat a fart. Morty agrees while crying, and Rick tells him it's been great getting to know him in this short time. Short time? I guess just like in the show, he just came back into Morty and Beth's life after 2 decades of being absent from it. Then after the crowd takes off, Rick walks up to Morty, startling him, and reveals that what Morty thought was Rick was actually another Class 2 cloner beast. I guess the short time thing was foreshadowing them. It's pretty creative. They managed to subvert my expectations and use a Chekhov's gun. He actually took advantage of the alien-created clones concept from an issue ago. That was pretty smart of him. No wonder he kept the cloners around that prison. He needed a decoy. And I guess he's just so lazy that he thought it was less effort to make clones by using the cloner beasts. And so much less effort that it was worth keeping those dangerous things around when he can make clones without them. I guess it makes sense that he didn't warn Morty about all this and avoid upsetting him, because he needed Morty's reaction to be convincing to fool the aliens. So, does that mean the Rick that got fed bug food was a clone Rick? Rick's so casual about all this that he tells Morty to try to take a picture with the clone. And the story ends with him and Morty coming back home through the portal, just as they see the aliens going up to them with sickles threatening them. So, doesn't that mean that the fake death was pointless because they saw Rick again immediately afterwards anyways? Why did they come back there? To take over Rick's house? Then why didn't they immediately try to take over his house? So this story was kind of confusing. Because the alien orphans don't even question why a human boy who clearly has to be related to Rick not only has a portal gun, but suddenly starts working with them like it's no big deal. And yet Daphne immediately trusts him enough to show them that they plan on revolting against Rick after only a day. So if he didn't have that clone there, they'd have shot him instead. Or he could have just portaled to another planet. So Morty gets sent to an alien planet to be a spy who would give Rick advance warning on when his underpaid workers are going to revolt on him after he started a war that orphaned them in the first place. At least he gave them wages to support themselves afterwards. So he was kind of making up for it. Even if he should have paid them more instead of being cheap. I mean, he's Rick. He can make portals, so he shouldn't have any trouble getting money. So why would he care about saving it? He could just make a portal inside a bank vault and steal the money effortlessly. I can imagine Scourge doing that with his own like teleporter. So combine that with me not being told why he started that war in the first place, when it seemed like he had nothing to gain from pitting their peaceful tribes against each other. And him being the villain here seems a little forced. As in, that pitting is like a villain ball. He didn't have to give them money to support themselves after what he did, so I can't blame him for feeling like they were traitors being ungrateful. But he also had no excuse to be cheap. I guess the reason he started the war was so that he'd make money off the tribes paying him for the weapons he made for them. But again, can't he just portal to a bank vault or something to steal as much money as he wants whenever he wants without even being seen? He can become a billionaire whenever he wants. So why care about making money and saving it? That's the same reason why I can't believe that Scourge would have evil plans involving stealing money, when he has access to a device that could let him zone hop to wherever in the multiverse he wants. Not to mention he has super speed, so he could easily mug anyone or steal something and get away with it by running away. I understand why it's supposed to make sense that Morty got mad at Rick so easily. He spent so much time with the workers that he sympathized with them. And it couldn't have been fun to get dragged to an alien planet just for a so-called fun adventure to just be him working at a farm all day with old-fashioned tools. Rick could have... Well, no. I guess building robots to farm for free wouldn't be free because he'd have to pay for the materials to build them with. How is he supposed to know exactly where all the robot materials he needs are so he could steal them? So he'd have to buy them. He had a point with Rick. They should have told him about the spy cam. And yeah, especially because Rick could have easily revealed himself to Daphne by talking through it at the wrong time. He wasn't with Morty, so how would he have known when the wrong time was to talk? He could have easily given Morty away right there, and he didn't have a real reason to not tell Morty about the spy cam ahead of time. But to be fair, he didn't have a reason to tell him either. It was interesting at least, which managed to make the story worth reading. It managed to have a genuinely sad moment that got me to care about Rick at the end, even in spite of everything he did. It may have been a clone, but it still highlighted how he and Morty truly care about each other at the end of the day, even if Morty stands up for himself. I just wish there wasn't any gore.